Hey everyone, welcome back to another Papo review. Today we're taking a look at which is probably the most anticipated dinosaur model release of 2019. It's the Papo limited edition Spinosaurus aegyptiacus. This figure got announced way back in January, and almost 11 months later we finally have it. It did get delayed a few times. I think it was supposed to come out sometime in the summertime around July, and then it got pushed back to October. And now finally at the beginning of December, this figure is finally shipping. I ordered mine from Dan's Dinosaur. This was actually, surprisingly, my first time ordering anything from Dan's Dinosaur, and I'm happy to say this package arrived in perfect shape. The box is in pretty much perfect condition. Not that I really care too much for the box, because obviously this is a review and I will be taking this thing out of the box. So let's take a quick look at this limited edition packaging before we crack open this beautiful looking figure. You can see the Spinosaurus is displayed front and center in this huge window opening. All around the trim of the box you have nice artwork of leaves and trees and cattails. And right in the front right here you have the Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, stating it is a limited edition figure. And it is the first figure in a limited edition series. As of right now, Papo hasn't announced anything else in this limited edition line, so hopefully maybe after they finally reveal their figures, they only teased a couple the other day, they will announce a new limited edition figure in this line. You got the Papo logo in the corner right here, and then right in the back you can see, let me just focus in on that, you got the Papo logo all done in gold with limited edition in multiple languages along the back of the box. And then spinning it around on the side of the box you have a nice picture of the Spinosaurus. This is actually the prototype. If you notice right away, there is some differences between the paint on the prototype and what we actually got, but we'll get into that in further detail when we get more into the review. And then spinning the box around you get a nice full art picture of the Spinosaurus in all its glory. It states that it is a hand painted figure. It is a French creation, and they have a nice little timeline on the bottom of when Spinosaurus existed before T-Rex. And then right here we have when we popped up in the timeline, and right here you have a silhouette of the size difference between those two dinosaurs. And up here it states that the jaw is articulated, and right here in multiple different languages it's just a short little facts about Spinosaurus aegyptiacus. Was a giant over 15 meters long, close to the largest known theropods as Tyrannosaurus rex. And that is pretty much for the information on this box. Here in the corner you got more of a statement that this is a limited edition figure and more of those leaves and trees. So yeah, definitely a really nice looking collector box. I mean, this is something, I like taking my figures out of the package. I really don't care if they're limited edition or not, but this is definitely a nice option for people that just want to keep their figures in a nice looking package. So enough about the packaging, let's crack open the Spinosaurus and take a closer look. Removing the Spinosaurus from its box is pretty easy. There's just two tabs on either side of the box that you just need to slide open, and this whole sleeve will slide out relatively easily. And all you need to do is just cut these plastic strips, which I already removed, that just hold the arms and feet in, and it just very easily pops off this plastic tray. So it's a good option if you want to keep the box. They can easily place this Spinosaurus back in it. If you want to keep it displayed in the box, if you just want to take it out once in a while and handle it, it does clip back into its plastic tray relatively easily. And now here's the Spinosaurus out of the box in all its glory. And as you can see, it is a very beautiful and detailed model. A lot of fine details on this, tons of scalation, a lot of nice paint apps on it. The paint apps aren't perfect, but when we get further in the review, I'll just point out my problems with them. Just overall, it is a really nice piece. I can see why there was a lot of hype around this figure. It is definitely a gorgeous looking Spinosaurus. So before we dive any deeper into the review, let's do a couple quick measurements. This figure is about 15.5 inches long, or about 40 centimeters, and just about 6.25 inches tall, or about 16 centimeters. Spinosaurus is roughly about 15 meters long, or about 49 feet. So with those measurements, that would put this model somewhere in the 1/38 scale range. Moving on to the pose of this figure, as you can see, the Spinosaurus is in the quadrupedal pose, which has caused a lot of debate, both in the paleontological community and the dinosaur fan community. There's just so much about this animal we still don't know about. I mean, every time a new bone is found, we're going to learn something new about this animal. And, some people think it was a true quadruped, others think it was bipedal. It could have been both. It could have been, semi-bipedal, semi-quadrupedal, but it is definitely a very interesting animal. Over the last few years, so much of our understanding of this huge carnivore has changed. There was some argument with Scott Hartman. He does skeletal for dinosaurs. He said that, on the initial paper on Spinosaurus that came out a few years ago, that the legs were scaled too small. He said, I think he said they were like 27% too short, but the paleontologist that worked in that paper, Nizer Abraham, said that these are the correct length for Spinosaurus. It really did have hind legs that were that short, which would force this animal to be a quadruped. There's more studies that, the center of gravity was about here on the animal, which would force it to walk on all fours. And now there's another study saying that the center of gravity is above the hips, which would allow this animal to walk on two legs. So bottom line is, we still need to find a lot more material on this animal before we can truly understand how this creature lived and moved around. Now, getting back to the pose, when you face this figure from the front and looking at it head on, the arms are like splayed out and it looks very awkward. Like all the front weight of this animal is supported on these front claws. If this animal was on land, arms wouldn't be like that. There would be more directly underneath its body to support its weight, resting on the knuckles. But there is a reason why this figure is posed like this. On the back of the box, it says this is the aquatic hunting position, which means, use your imagination, picture this animal, walking along like a shallow lake or stream, maybe water up to here, using the buoyancy of the water. Its arms are splayed out while it's walking around with its hind legs, searching for prey, and those arms are probably just splayed out, waiting to snatch a victim like this shark right here. So there is a good explanation of why it's posed like this. I know a lot of people did not like the arms being splayed out like that. It just looked very awkward, and I do agree, it looks awkward, but at least Papo gave us an explanation on the back of the box of why that is. And turn this figure upside down to look at it from the top. You can see there's just a lot of lifelike sculpting in this pose right here. Papo always does a great job of making their figures look like they stepped out of a picture. They always look alive. You can see the tail is curved like it's paddling through the water. Right here, the body is contorted. The sail is bending with the body. Just a very, very lifelike pose. And this figure is still a beautifully sculpted, beautifully posed Spinosaurus. The painting on this figure is really good, but when you compare this side by side with the prototype image, it is almost like a night and day difference. You can see similarities with this paint scheme. There's a lot of different color browns, whites, blacks, oranges and reds mixed in there. But when you get to the sail right here, even like the in-hand pictures of people that got this figure before I did, the sail doesn't look as nice as it did in the prototype. I feel like you got this black stripe right here with some bright orange mixed in. There's some white right here, and you got a little bit of white paint highlighting it between the neural spines. I feel like a dark wash over this would have brought out all that really nice scale detail that is there. And I feel like it's just lost, like it's kind of muted. I just feel like the sail could have been painted a lot better. The body coloration is okay to me. I think the sail is probably my biggest issue. I just wish it was painted a little bit better. The body does look really nice, especially when you get down to the tail. A lot of nice blend. You got that nice red along the fin, along the tail right here. But I do wish this looked more like the prototype. I do understand that, prototypes do differ from the final in-hand product. My problem is that, this figure was, touted for so long as being a limited edition figure, I feel like extra effort should have gone into the paint application on this to really, really make this figure stand out. If this was just a regular release figure, I really don't think I'll be complaining that much about the paint scheme like I am right now. I just feel like it just needed a little more work to really, set this apart from the other figures in the Papo line, especially if they're going along this limited edition route. You really, really need to make these figures feel like they're like a premium. So let's move on to the head of this figure right here. It is a beautiful looking Spinosaurus head. You got the crest right here, just before the eyes and before the nostrils. The nostrils are nice and high along the snout. There's some studies that show that the snout of Spinosaurus is very similar to like alligators and crocodiles, where it could sense changes in water pressure and be able to detect nearby prey. The teeth are painted bright white. They kind of have this very a shiny acrylic paint look to them. If you look at some of Papo's other figures, like their Acrocanthosaurus and even their Baryonyx, the color white they use is a little better looking than this. This is kind of just like a flat white color. I feel like it just needed maybe like a wash over to kind of give it that, a little bit more of a live look, like kind of that dirty look. I just feel like they're just too white compared to like all the nice blending on the rest of the figure. And also these teeth right here just seem absolutely huge, like these huge fangs hanging off this animal. In real life these teeth were much more proportionate. I just feel like they're a little too big. It kind of just takes away from the overall head sculpt. But inside the mouth right here, when you can see that tongue has those serrations and ridges along the side of the tongue right here, it looks very similar to a tongue on a goose. And let me just see if I can get a nice close-up inside the mouth. Just try to shine a light in there. Look at that mouth detail in the back. You can actually see the opening to the throat back there, and that is just some fantastic detail. And just look at the detail on the tongue. It has a nice shiny coat over it to give it that wet, alive look. And even the top of the mouth has some nice detail right here. Papo definitely has some of the best looking inside of the mouth on their dinosaur figures compared to most companies. And you can see the gum right here, but unfortunately right here it's not painted the same color as the gum tissue right here. And I feel like they should just painted that in a little bit to make that blend in better. They have done it on other figures like their Acrocanthosaurus. I don't understand why they did not do that on this figure. I just feel like it's just too plain. It's pretty much the same color as the head right here. But since we have this really nice close-up of the head, just look at the detail of the scales on here. Just the little pits on each individual scale. A lot of care went into designing this figure, and you can see it, especially when you looking at it up close like this. It's not really a terribly shrink wrapped skull. Like, you can see the eye right here, which is painted yellow with black pupil. There's just a little shrink wrapping right here, but other than that, the head looks absolutely fantastic. And look, there's those little pressure sensors right here on the tip of the nose. This is definitely a fantastic looking spine. So look at all the different size scales around the eye. Just absolutely a beautiful looking Spinosaurus head. And also, like most Papo theropods, it does come with an articulated jaw. And I've said it in multiple reviews, especially other companies that have been adding articulated jaws to their figures. Papo has pretty much mastered the craft on this. It's a very smooth operating mechanism. It doesn't look awkward at all. Definitely Collected could take a lesson from Papo when they put their articulated jaws on their figures. And moving down to the neck, you can see all these nice scutes and osteoderm sculpted on the top of the neck, very reminiscent of crocodiles and alligators. It just seems like, ever since this, more aquatic theory of Spinosaurus come out, a lot of influences are taken from alligators and crocodiles, and a lot of the Spinosaurus figures we are seeing on the market, you got more of those large scales going all the way down the back right here, almost to about the 3/4 of the way down the tail, and it just turns into this eel-like tail, which I like this. Some people didn't like this. I really am not a fan of the crocodile tail that are on a few of the other Spinosaurus figures out there, kind of like Safaris and Collectes and Schleichs. I definitely do dig this eel-looking tail. It's something very different that we have not seen on a Spinosaurus figure. Did they have this in real life? We'll have no idea unless a perfect skin impression is found, but I definitely do like the imagination that went into sculpting this figure. One thing I forgot to point out quick when we're on the head, there is no visible ear on any side of this figure, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, there's so many great details on it. I just kind of feel like the ear has been overlooked, unless it got lost when they, separated the piece, the mold, the rest, because the head is a seam right here. Sometimes that does happen, but yeah, kind of just disappointed that there's not an ear on the Spinosaurus. Now, moving down to the spines, you can see the spines are all clearly sculpted onto this figure, and a lot of nice scale detail in there. Like I said when I went over the paint application, I feel like a lot of that detail is lost, especially without a dark wash on this. I just feel like these colors should have been blended in better. And there's a lot of debate of why Spinosaurus had a sail, or even if it was a sail. Some scientists think this was actually like a fatty hump on its back to store, fat for, wherever environment it lived in. And there is some studies with Spinosaurus, I guess other Spinosaurus, and Oranosaurus, which was an ornithopod that lived in the same general area as Spinosaurus. The neural spines were thicker, kind of like some of the mammals, during prehistoric times, where they had thicker spines which supported a fatty hump, unlike Dimetrodon, which had much thinner neural spines, which we knew actually had a sail. So there's even debate if this animal actually had a sail or it was just used as a fatty hump. And also, what was it used for? It could have been used for thermal regulation. If the animal was fully aquatic, it could have been used as, some kind of fish herding device, kind of almost like a thresher shock, or it could have been used for display for courtship or challenging rival animals in your territory. But again, that's what makes, dinosaurs so fascinating. There's so much we don't know about them. And, pretty much our imagination is our only limit when it comes to understanding these animals. Now, moving on down to the hands. The hands are sculpted, very powerful looking, and they are absolutely huge on this model. They're actually a little bit bigger than the feet. You can see there's some beautiful muscle detail sculpted into these very powerful looking arms. You even got some keeled scales, starting from the elbow right here, going down the arm to about the wrist area. You got some nice scalation along the fingers. You actually can even see webbing between the fingers right here. And then turning it around, looking in the palms of this hand, you can see all those fine little scales sculpted in there. Those small scales to show that's like a part of the animal that would have a lot of movement. And as you go up where there's less movement, the scales do become larger. And then even looking at the claws on this, there's even detail in the claw. Look at all the cracks on this claw, which would be the keratin sheath actually covering the bone cores of this. And then spinning it around, you can see some powerful looking pectoral muscles sculpted in, and a lot of nice large rectangular scales sculpted all the way down the stomach of this animal. Very reminiscent of the underbelly of a crocodile. Very, very beautifully done. And then look at the main body. If you run your fingers right here, you can actually feel the ribs of this animal. You can see some nice folds and wrinkles along the stomach, and all those different size scales right here. There's even like little pits sculpted into various ones along here. It just looks absolutely amazing. And then coming down to those very, very short hind legs, you can see there's a lot of nice muscle detail right here. Nice scalation along the toes, and even spinning the feet over there, that nice pink coloration, just like the forearms did. And you can see the webbing between the feet right here. And then on this other foot, which I absolutely love the sculpt of this foot right here. Papo just really, really nailed that lifelike movement. Like, look at all the skin bunched up right there just to show the movement within this foot. You got all the claws painted in black, all those fine scale details to show where a lot of movement would be on the foot. And even the dew claw has some webbing that connects to the foot right here. All in all, just absolutely beautifully sculpted. And going down to the tail, you can see the tail is nicely sculpted too. It starts out nice and thick and powerful, and then tapers down to that eel-like tip. And now when you look at it from this side, this is one of the other problems I have with this figure. This very, very visible seam. You know, if you look at other Papo figures, there are some seams on their figures, but they're blended in pretty well. And I just feel like the seam should have been blended into the figure a little bit more to give it more of that limited edition premium look. I mean, it does bug me a little when I look at it. I mean, on this side, it's not as noticeable as it is from the other side. You know, even like you can see the seams are blended in pretty well along the hind legs right here. But yeah, I do feel like this seam could have been blended into the body a little bit better. So now going back down to the tail, you can see more of those large scales sculpted along it, just all different types of size scales. I absolutely love holding this figure in my hand. It just feels so great. And I love those little slits on the fins right here on the tail. It just adds so much character to this figure. Just all in all, a absolutely gorgeous piece by Papo, even though it does have a couple little flaws in my eyes. Alright, let's move on with some comparisons. And first up, let's start out with Papo's original Spinosaurus. This figure came out quite some time ago, and clearly it's based on the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3, and you can really just see like how much our understanding of this animal has changed over the years. You know, instead of, you know, just having this, you know, very typical theropod body with that crocodile-like snout, now we have this, you know, aquatic-looking bipedal animal. And I know Papo is big into repainting their figures, but man, if there's one that seriously needs to be repainted, it is this Spinosaurus right here. If they just repainted it in that Jurassic Park 3 color scheme, I'm sure this thing would sell like crazy. And next up is the very awkward and controversial looking Papo Baryonyx. I mean, it kind of looks like a Baryonyx. It does have a very nice Spinosaurus head on it. It does not really look like a Baryonyx head. Definitely one of their more, I'll say, interesting figures over the years, but obviously this figure is not to scale to Spinosaurus. Baryonyx was much smaller than Spinosaurus. And here it is with some other more accurate looking Spinosaurus from other companies. This one up here is the Collecte Spinosaurus, which is a decent figure, but the only thing that really ruins this figure, it has its hands pronated. Spinosaurus could not walk like this without breaking its wrists. That's pretty much the only downfall of this figure. And like I said, it has that crocodile looking tail, which I am not a fan of. Even the Safari one has that crocodile looking tail. You know, if you think the pose on the Papo Spinosaurus is awkward, definitely check out the Safari 2019 Spinosaurus with those back legs that are kicking out like it's swimming. So let's move this one off to the side right here. And this other big figure in the background is the Pianesso Spinosaurus, which is a fantastic figure right here. It's a little more shrink wrap than this one. The back legs are a little bit, let me just move his head, a little bit longer to almost suggest that this animal was more bipedal than the Papo one, but it's still a fine looking model. I think these two look really nice together. They actually pretty much scale with each other. It has definitely been the year of the Spinosaurus. You know, pretty much every major company now has a bipedal Spinosaurus in their lineup. You know, Rebar has the big grab-and-go Spinosaurus that's coming out relatively soon, and I do find it kind of fitting that we are getting all these Spinosauruses this year, because this year is the 75th anniversary that the original holotype of Spinosaurus was destroyed during World War II bombing in Germany. So that is kind of sad that we lost that holotype, even though the holotype has been reconstructed from photographs as part of that traveling Spinosaurus exhibit. But we definitely have our pick of Spinosauruses right now. Everyone has a quadrupedal Spinosaurus to pick from. And here it is with the Papo Green Running Rex. And these two figures do scale really well together. This Papo Running Rex is roughly in that 138 scale range. Let me just turn around the other way so you can see them more side by side. And these two figures do look really nice displayed next to each other. And we might as well take out the original Papo Green Standing T-Rex, which is the model that definitely started it all for Papo dinosaur-wise. And let's compare it to a couple other large theropod dinosaurs from other companies. This is the collected Carcharodontosaurus, which was another large theropod dinosaur that shared the same area with Spinosaurus. Obviously, this figure is not to scale with Spinosaurus. Carcharodontosaurus was a little bit bigger than this figure right here. And here it is with the Papo Acrocanthosaurus, which is still, this one right here is my favorite figure ever produced by Papo. And this figure scales pretty well with that Spinosaurus. And lastly, here it is with the Eofauna Giganotosaurus. And these two figures do look really, really nice next to each other. And here it is with the other large dinosaur in the Papo lineup, the Brachiosaurus. You can see the Spinosaurus is pretty sizable next to this Brachiosaurus. It is a little bit longer. The Brachiosaurus definitely weighs a lot more, because it's definitely a solid piece of plastic. And if the Brachiosaurus neck was reared down, it would definitely be longer than the Spinosaurus. And lastly, for comparisons, I swear, here it is with some of the other figures in the 2019 Papo lineup, the Pentaceratops, Gorgosaurus, and the Allosaurus repaint. We really didn't get a lot of new sculpts from Papo this year. We only got three, the Pentaceratops, Gorgosaurus, and the Spinosaurus. And the other three figures, the Allosaurus, the brown running T-Rex, and the Stegosaurus, are just repaints of pre-existing figures. So hopefully, Papo already just started teasing their new figures for this year. There's some speculation of what they are going to be. So hopefully we get some new sculpts this year. I'm not a huge fan of repaints unless they're really, really good. Like I said, if they repainted their old Spinosaurus in the Jurassic Park 3 colors, I think that would be a fine repaint. So final thoughts on this figure. Does it live up to that limited edition status? Yes and no. I think it's a fine looking figure. It has beautiful detail on it. My complaints are, especially the paint along the sail right there. I just wish it looked more like the prototype. The teeth in the mouth are a little bit too big, and that seam along where the tail meets the body is kind of distracting. I just feel like Papo really promoted this thing as being a limited edition figure. They did their 2019 announcement, and all of a sudden the Spinosaurus gets announced totally separately, and the reason for that was very few people at Papo knew about the development of this figure. They wanted to keep it a big surprise, and they just kept saying it's the limited edition figure. So I just wish a little bit more work went into it to really make it stand out as a limited edition figure, like better paint apps. I think the sculpted in detail is fine. This figure is a beautifully sculpted figure. Once you have it in hand, you look at all the details, all that fine scale detail, that ridiculously detailed inside the mouth. A lot of work went into this figure, but I just feel like the paint apps are holding it back. It just needed to be a little bit better to truly make this figure feel like a limited edition figure. Now, speaking of it being a limited edition, Papo has not released any number of how many of the Spinosaurus has been made. I know when it was first announced, a lot of people were freaking out that it was going to be very hard to get. It was going to be going for outrageous prices on eBay, blah, blah, blah. This figure's been out for a week and a half now. I ended up getting mine from Dan's Dinosaur. From him, it retails for $59.99 plus shipping. Everything Dinosaur has it, Happy Hand has it, and they still have them in stock. They haven't sold out yet, so I'm sure Papo made a lot of these. I don't think they really want to piss people off, with their first limited edition just being, sold out in a second, and then no one could get their hands on it. Just really upset their fan base. So I'm sure they made plenty of these, and maybe down the road we'll find out how many actually would get made. I'm actually kind of interested to find that out. So on top of that too, this being a limited edition, I don't think this is the last time we're going to see the Spinosaurus mold. Definitely a ton of resources went into making this figure, and I'm sure it's not one and done. I'm sure it's one and done in this paint scheme, and they could release it later on in a totally different paint scheme, and it really wouldn't take it away of this color scheme being limited edition. So like I said a couple times in the video, I got this from Dan's Dinosaur. I'll leave a link in the description. He still has them in stock, and Everything Dinosaur also has it. I think theirs comes to about $50 if you get it from them, but with shipping, it probably comes about the same, especially if you live in the US, if you got it from Dan's or Happy Hens. So I'll leave a link to Dan's and Everything Dinosaur in the description. And as always, if you're liking the reviews on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. The channel just passed the 900 subscriber mark, and I'd love it if this channel hit the 1,000 subscriber milestone before the 1 year anniversary of the channel, which is sometime in the middle of January. You know, each subscription helps out the channel tremendously, and it's greatly appreciated. So that will pretty much do it for this review. And, you know, I got some other Jurassic World stuff I'll be reviewing shortly. And hopefully I will be getting the new 2020 Safari figures in. Hopefully they come up on sale on their website, because I'm dying to get my hands on those. So when I get those in, be looking for reviews on those. And I'll see you guys for the next one.